Dirty Dancing. 1987, so 35 years ago. Do we all remember it? I was 16, so I can tell you that it was everything. It was the best. And it holds up. That's my opinion. So, budget-wise, interesting, because this falls under Little Film That Could. The little movie that could. Because it could. The budget was only 6 million, and they grossed in the US and Canada, they grossed over 60 million. In 1987, that was a very, very, very good result, because they tenfolded it, but worldwide they took 250 million. And now you ask yourself, why is this important? Well, this was never a movie that was made for the cinemas. This was actually a straight-to-video movie. The straight-to-video world had only just begun. And this was a company that made super crap movies. You can look up what company it is. I'm not going to bash anyone. But they had not made something proper yet. And they were doing very well with made-to-video. And they got the script for Dirty Dancing. You can watch the Netflix documentary, the movies that made us. It is episode 1 of season 1, Dirty Dancing. Why did I start with Dirty Dancing? Because everyone has seen Dirty Dancing. Everyone and their auntie. So it certainly impacted everything and everybody. And it's just a bizarre set of circumstances that made it all happen. A fun script, nostalgia, definitely that's worth doing. Nostalgia always works in American movies. I don't know about other countries whether they're so much into nostalgia, but Hollywood is into nostalgia. That's. I mean, even in the 1950s, they were making nostalgia movies about the 1920s. Singing in the Rain, big hit. In the 1920s, I'm sure they were making stuff that was nostalgia happy for from like another 30 years before. Anything that's a generation or so ago, people get nostalgic about, which I think is why you get these reboots after 20-30 years. They want to reboot stuff because they go, oh, wasn't that lovely, can't we do that again? I haven't seen the reboot of Dirty Dancing. Anyway, it spoke to memories. That's an important aspect of Dirty Dancing. It was kind of put together as a teen movie for the video market. You can see this when you watch the opening credits and the closing credits. That is totally not cinema. The way how large all the titles on the screens are. It's just and the slow-mo video that completely dates it. But now we're nostalgic about it because it's just, oh, that was Dirty Dancing, how cute. And you hear the music coming up and you're completely already into it and sold for the next 1.5 hours. Because made for DVD, made for video, so it wasn't a 2-hour movie. It was a 1 hour, 35 minutes. They did a couple of things right. They got a director that was a dancer and he understood the dancing world. They didn't get a director. I'm sure they were looking for all sorts of directors and they didn't get who they wanted. Isn't that always the case? But maybe they got who they needed. I should have it written down here somewhere what the director's name is. I will come to it. But he's awesome. Clearly, without the director being a dancer, you couldn't have made this movie because it's all dancing all the time. Yes. I found the name of the director. Yay! Emile Ardonlino. I'm just going to assume that he is properly Italian. I don't know. There are things you don't want. That kind of level of research, you don't want to go there. Anyway, so he wanted experienced dancers in the film. And I think that's also important. This is the kind of quality you get. Doesn't matter how low the budget is if you get the right people in the right places, you get somebody who says, let's get proper dancers in. And you might as well get proper dancers in, who I'm sure also are perpetually underpaid, as just a whole bunch of extras that can't dance. And you look super amateurish and bad, and this did not. And the whole thing, cinematographically, is put together so beautifully because all the dancing is proper dancing when it should be. You can see the difference when the dancing is happening for the staff members who are, doing dance for yeah. So you have the dancing staff members. The staff members, when they dance, it looks proper. It looks this is like, and it's super luscious as well because it is dirty dancing, so it's super sexualized dancing, and we love that. And then when you see them doing the dance classes with the vacationers in the vacation resort, it's very blocky and super cheesy, and that juxtaposition together works really well. It also kind of shows who's there for serious, as in they're there to work, they're there to be they're there for a proper reason, and the vacationers who are there because they just want to spend some nice time, and they're not working, and it shows it visualizes all of that really, really well. Another thing that I had about the fact that it's a made for video movie is that you can see if even it's nice widescreen, normal 16:9, but you can see that if you box it in for the 4:3, that everything is always happening in that section, and they did that very beautifully. Fantastic that they actually did film it in proper 16:9, because if they hadn't, they wouldn't have been able to release it as a theatrical release. Don't ask me how they managed to get it into theaters. I am not privy to that kind of stuff, but it was a good choice that they did that. You have to remember that in '87, nobody had ever heard of widescreen television. So it's not like, it's going to be on widescreen television eventually. No, that wasn't until I think the late 90s that the widescreen televisions came on the market. So, some foresight, or maybe that's standard what these straight-to-video production companies do. I don't know. It was the first straight-to-video feature film ever made, so who knows why they made decisions that they did. Also, for the first, I've got some numbers, which is always fun to browse IMDb. Yeah, so it was a hit in the cinema, a hit in the record sales, and I'll talk about the music. It had awards for music. It is the highest grossing independent film ever made at that time. I didn't check whether later there was a higher grossing, because on this channel we've talked about Four Weddings and a Funeral, and that's also in the $250 million range, but that's 10 years later, so maybe this, adjusted for inflation, who knows. The company who produced it went bankrupt. This has to do with shenanigans going on behind the scenes, and I will not go into that, but if you want to know more about it, go to the Netflix documentary that I mentioned. I do want to talk about what kind of genre this actually falls in, because they put it on the market as a teen movie. Now, I was 16. Were you 16? If you were in the cinema watching this. So a teen market, not a problem. But if you were not 16 and you were a little older, you were probably also in the cinema watching it, because it appealed to everybody. This is a movie accessible to anybody and everybody. They actually cut the first lovemaking scene from the original release, and you have to have I left my DVD I left my Blu-ray in the other room. But I was just going to show you the Blu-ray with the 20th anniversary. That's where they put it back in. I don't remember that it wasn't in there. So for the international market, I'm in the Netherlands. Possibly we did get the lovemaking scene on Cry. What was the song? It's always like everything is backed by a song in this movie, and I am the worst person to comment on that. But anyway, so they chopped it because it is so sexual. Now you don't see anything, although everyone's very naked. It's about as naked as you can get without being indecent most of the time. But it's a summer resort. You would be walking around in shorts and like a teeny tiny top. Even in 1962, actually 63. Actually, I think in those days they were really into the skimpy. The hot pants and it's not yet. The peanuts and the gallery says no, not yet. No, it's a little. That's another thing about this storytelling, and I will make a different video about the actual story. But the storytelling is actually great. Everybody acts like they're from 1963, except for the main character. Because she's clearly our 1980s vision of what we would have liked to have been like in the 60s. We would have wanted to have been all those, aspirational. and fair enough. That is why you make a movie now that is set 30 years ago. Is you want to peek into that. And I get it. It works. But they did. I don't know. I think they tried to get the costuming peanut gallery. Do you have anything about the costuming? It looked pretty reasonable to me.
It looks like the 1980s interpretation of what the
too
60s.
Colorful.
A little bit. The quality of the materials is a little bit too good.
This is often a thing with period films, is that they don't actually use the fabrics that were available then. If you look at the old Star Trek, TOS, big Trekkie, live long and prosper, and there's two more in the peanut gallery. If you look at that, you know that they didn't have stretch materials yet. They didn't have stretch fabric. That's why they had to do very strange things that you would never do now. Because why wouldn't you just make that out of stretch fabrics?
They had a jersey fabric, but it was not nearly as nice as they had in the 1980s. What you are wearing is a modern stretch fabric of that type, and they had a jersey, but it was clunky and rough.
Yes, so they have this zipper going down the side so that they can actually move in and out of their really tight-fitting shirt, because everything had to be tight. Basically, what you want for futuristic stuff. Now we're going to Star Trek. Why are we doing Star Trek while we're doing Dirty Dancing? Anyway, because we're talking costuming. If you want futuristic stuff, you want your outfits to look like something you can't make now. And that they did really well. But we'll do an outfit one later, yes. End of the Star Trek bit. The movie went out with an R rating. What? I love it. That doesn't work. It's a teen movie. Yes, they're undulating against each other. It's very sexy. I know. But it's only implying. And so that didn't hold water very long. Again, I refer you to the Netflix documentary. But they managed to get it down to PG-13 with notification that there's an abortion in the storyline. Now, that's great because... Not the abortion. I mean, the fact that... The fact that they were willing to talk about abortion. That's great. And it appealed to adults. So I think that's one of the reasons why this movie was so successful, is it wasn't just the teens watching, it was the adults watching it as well. And maybe all the way up to 50-somethings, because they would have been remembering their youth at such summer camps. Brings me to the summer camp. So they could not film in the Catskills, even though it says everywhere on IMDb that they filmed in the Catskills. They did not film in the Catskills. They filmed south of the Catskills. Now, what that means in reality, in terms of money, all I can say is it probably means that was cheaper. Because remember, the budget was only 6 million. And you have to remember that budget also has to get all the old music in. To get,
Expensive.
yeah, that's a problem. So they could only afford 14 days of shooting in the summer camp. It was in Pembroke, Virginia. Okay. For those who are from that region, yay you! I'm sure there's a commemorative something. Because they had a lake that remember the scene where baby walks up to her father and she apologizes, but she also accuses him of, beautifully emotional scene, and he just sits there and looks at her and cries. Very, very good acting on both parts. And you look out over that lake. It's also the lake where they did the lift training. It was apparently freezing cold. Because by the time they were filming, it was autumn. They couldn't film in the summer because nobody would, that's when they actually have their resorts going on. But the lake was drained, and in the documentary on Netflix, you will see that there's a commemorative stone there for Patrick Swayze that was put there in 2009 after Patrick Swayze passed away, and that's a point where you just kind of start bouldering up and going, okay, yes, I love this movie. So yeah, that you can visit that. Love that. And then the boys camp, they call it the boys camp in various references, but it's really the staff quarters. It's not just the boys that live there, but that was filmed in North Carolina. And they had a pavilion where they could do the dance sequences. So I would assume all interiors were probably not filmed in Virginia. Also, by the time they first went filming in Virginia, and they didn't have the music yet because there was a problem getting the oldies. You've got the newbies and the oldies of the musics, and
royalties.
That was a royalty issue, and they needed somebody to get the royalties organized for them. But once they did get that within budget, somebody did a good job. The film soundtrack started an oldies revival, because by that time we're a generation on from the early 60s, those oldies numbers, and everyone goes, oh, nice. Same thing happened with Cliff Richard's The Young Ones. Somewhere late in the 80s, he made a video clip with The Young Ones.
Comedy show at the time. A very famous comedy show.
And he sang his song, and it went to I don't know number what, but it went back in the charts again. It's like, hey, what? So similar thing happened here with all the American oldies. It went on a Dirty Dancing album, and the album went platinum 11 times in 1987. It sold more than 32 million copies worldwide. Now, I'd say that's a roaring success. It also had the newbie songs on it. She's Like the Wind. We saw the film, video clip of it in the Top of the Pops and whatever American programs they had for pops. And it's like, oh, but Patrick Swayze sang that. But how can that be? And I'm 16. I'm not wondering. I'm just going, woot. But that was because they thought for a while that they couldn't get the oldies at all, so they needed to get music in. And then once they had that, the other thing is I Had the Time of My Life, and that is still in it is number 86 of the American Film Institute's 100 top songs of the last 100 years. So it did extraordinarily well. And that one also got an Oscar, an Academy Award for Best Original Song. So it didn't just have old and songs in it, it also had new songs in it. The dancing, other than what I've already talked about, the director and the juxtaposition and what it actually does for the story, but they also needed the actors to be able to dance, the main cast to be able to dance. Only Swayze and Jennifer Grey. And Swayze, as it turned out, was a ballet dancer. So, woot again, because without that, you have no movie. If he can't sell it to that he's absolutely for real, then they had some other actors in, and I won't go into all the casting because that's just an endless story. But if you don't have that, your movie doesn't work. No matter how heartfelt your story is. Same thing as the director making the decision on having all dancers in for the background dancing. Yeah. Blank. Jennifer Grey was a newbie to dancing, so she had to learn while she was doing the movie, and that works because she can be clunky when she needs to be clunky. Although I think both actors are really good actors and would have sold it anyway. But you can't sell being able to dance if you can't dance. Knowing all this, the lift that Swayze does at the end with Jennifer Grey, full on screen, you can see it's her, you can see it's him. He holds her and then he, up in the air, I don't know how many seconds, and then he brings her gently back down in it. I mean, that for her, she had never done this kind of dancing before. That is an enormous move, and when I was watching it when I was 16, I thought, oh, that's so cool. But now I'm thinking, oh my God, that is amazing that she was able to learn that in the space of, also you need to be acting and you need to be on time and you're freezing in the cold and you're smeltering in the heat, and I mean that is go fantastic. There's the first part of the Dirty Dancing movie is really, I would say the first third of it, all you see is the people dancing. So it's very clear about who their audience should be. If you like to see that going on, then you're in for the movie for the long haul. It's got story, it's got character, it's got everything, it's got background, it's got nostalgia, and it's a dancing movie. There are dancing movies that talk about dancing a lot, and then you have a few moments where somebody does it and maybe there's a stand-in. Fortunately for Patrick Swayze, he didn't need a stand-in, and I think for Jennifer Grey there were very few stand-ins, unless you only see her feet. I think the rest of the time there was no stand-in, and rightfully so. Apart from location, not having the money for location, they also had tight schedule for filming. They only had 2 weeks for her rehearsal, a total of 44 days of filming, and they were filming at the end of summer into autumn. I'm always surprised how much they can do in such time constraints, because I don't think that costume-wise this was a difficult movie, because everyone's wearing fairly plain clothes, although you have to do all the costumes because they're not contemporary clothes. It's still a period piece of sorts, but it's like, then you think 44 days of filming, is that enough? I don't know. I've never been on a film set, you tell me, but it does sound like, with all the dancing and choreography, then it's a good thing that the film, acting wise, wasn't a massive challenge. It wasn't Shakespeare, but at the moment that you say, okay, we're gonna do little scenes with very little dialogue, because half of it's dancing or it's just an in-between scene, you're gonna run into, if your actors aren't stellar, then you have a problem, because then it all falls apart because they can't sell it. So short doesn't actually mean that it is easier. So maybe it's easier to do a soliloquy for a 10-minute monologue than to do 3 lines or say baby, nobody puts baby in a corner. there's a lot to say about that one. Because you have to know what you're selling if it's that short. This was the first movie to sell 1 million copies on home video. I applaud at the same time. This was the first made-to-home video movie ever. So that kind of... I mean, it was a success. That's really what this is saying. It sold 1 million copies. So it was the top rental video of 1988. Same story, of course. Of course, it was the top rental video of 1988. How can it not be? I'm going to talk about the cast and the awesomeness and the story some other time.
But producers.
My peanut gallery points out that I do have to talk about a little bit behind the scenes of the producers. What I noticed as a Jewish woman from the Netherlands is that all the names, the top 4 names, were what looks like Jewish names. And I didn't know until I delved into this movie and I saw The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel that the whole Catskills concept was a Jewish resort, and that came out of because this was actually an historical issue. Even though the Jewish religion is not mentioned in the movie, but the Catskills came into being because at the early part of the 20th century, a lot of Jewish vacationers were banned from American resorts for love or money. It was a ban. So they made their own, and I watched season 1, 2, and I think 3 of Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and they go to the Catskills and they do the entire 2 months, so you know that they're actually in a higher income bracket than this family is, because they are only there for the 3 weeks. But everyone there was Jewish, and it was also to get the young people to mingle and to matchmake them with other eligible young people, so that it all stayed within everybody happy, mommy happy, daddy happy, and granny happy. So it's not mentioned in this movie at all, because probably Americans who know. But I'm Dutch, so I didn't know. So it is in the movie. It is tipped. They tip their finger into a little bit by Max Kellerman, who is the owner of the resort, refers to his grandmother and his grandfather as Bobby and Zadie or Zadie. Not references I know, but internet tells me that those are generally terms understood to be grandma and grandpa for certain parts of Jewish people. Then you come to the next thing, which I really should be talking about in the story one, is the moment that I realized, it's a Jewish resort. They were trying to get the main character, baby, to become attached to the owner's son, and he even flaunts with, I've got 2 hotels to my name, and he's a totally uninteresting person whatsoever, and he talks down to her, but she's just going along with the flow because that's what she's supposed to do, and then what is she gonna do? Come home with this Gentile person who is of a different class and economic status, and I'll talk about that in another video. But anyway, that is never in the movie. That is completely subtext. And the writer, Eleanor Bergstein, says that if you know what you're looking for, you know. And so that is definitely falls under the subtextual element here. I'm going to leave it there because I haven't even talked about the story yet, and I will do that next time. And this is my opinion on this part of things, of Dirty Dancing, and I'm sticking to it.